All right, and it is video number 7 for the introduction to magical games. And this one is about boss fights. And rather than see me talk about boss fights this entire time, I decided a better way to go would probably be to just show you guys some footage of me making some stuff that I'll be using for the boss fights. So, this is me making the cards for what's called the reading game, which is a game for getting reading done. And the basic way it works is you've got characters, and those characters all read at different speeds. And they read faster in different subjects. So in the beginning of the week, when you're giving out your calendar cards, you shuffle these guys up and you throw them in on various days, and depending who you get on that day, that is your opponent for the day. Now, you don't know how many pages they read until it's time to do reckoning at the end of the day, so you have to assume probably that they read as many as is possible. So that's what you're always going against. Now, it could be that they didn't read many at all. They all start with a base of 20, though, so you really need to do at least 20. And then all that is tracked on a cribbage board. And depending on the outcomes of these various races, you'll get various bonuses. And those bonuses will be used to fight bosses. And so the boss fight is broken up into a bunch of little battles, challenges, sometimes fighting mini bosses. And those bosses basically are the big goal broken down into smaller goals and mixed in there with some chance engines to make things weird. And also realizing that the achievement of those bigger goals isn't always going to be dependent on the achievement of those smaller goals. So in order to learn how to do a certain thing, you might read some books. But you don't have to read every book in order to gain a skill. A book might help you in the gaining of that skill. But what happens if you don't read it? Well, sometimes nothing. There are a lot of books that go unread. And a lot of skills that still wind up being gained despite that. And so when it comes to breaking down these goals, what you want to do is this. You want to set up a situation where you've broken your goal, your big goal, into a bunch of the things, the smaller goals that lead up to it. And you want to break it down all the way to what you'd be doing on a daily basis to meet up with that goal. And you want to set those dailies up in a way that really it would be unreasonable. If you did those dailies, it would be unreasonable to assume that you wouldn't meet that goal. So if you start with a simple goal of losing a few pounds, well, then there would be certain things you could do on a daily basis that would make it unreasonable to assume that you wouldn't meet that goal. You can see here, actually, slimes are harder to draw than you might otherwise think. It's a simple shape, and yet it's easy to mess it up. This one winds up looking too human. I wind up ditching it and going back to the other one again and just reworking it, but trying to find my best way around it. But some things just don't work out, and you just got to do them over. Don't worry about it. That's how life is. Sometimes you just need a better strategy, and sometimes you need to make the most of what is not otherwise perfect. So that's why this guy winds up being like a black slime, which I don't think I've encountered anywhere before, but life's full of surprises too, and well, there you go. So anyway, back to boss fights and doing the dailies and making it so that it would be unreasonable that if you attended to those daily things, it would be unreasonable that you didn't meet your goal, meet the whatever it is that big boss fight goal is. By the way, these can be any length in time. I usually recommend within 90 days, maybe even within 2 weeks or so. I often do them according to lunar cycles, but your mileage may vary. Doing an alien now, and this guy's gonna get a little silver table, unlike the others who mostly got brown and black. He's an alien, so he's got a special. Everything's metal, I guess, in their world. And I opted not to go with the alien gray because I might get a cease and desist letter from the alien grays on how they're represented in this very lucrative field of magical games. But anyway, back to boss fights. So let's say you were trying to run a tarot business. And so there are certain things that are involved in that. There's working on the skill of being a tarot reader. There's working on the skill of running a business, which is a completely different skill. So how are you letting people know what you're doing? Do you have an infrastructure already? Let's say you have an infrastructure already, but you need to get some clients. So what would be some good ways to get some clients? Here's another one I messed up. Sometimes it's better to draw it out first than to just wing it. Sometimes I just wing it and it works out. We'll see. Not this time. This time I needed help. Anyway, so you go out there. I guess the common advice out there would be, do lots of content and get your name out there. Interact with people in the community. And there are certain things you could do on a daily basis. And if your goal is to have 5 clients at the end of 90 days, what would make it so that it would be unreasonable that in those 90 days you couldn't get at least 5 clients? That doesn't mean you're going to be successful, because sometimes unreasonable things happen. And yet, what would be those daily things where you could basically expect, that you're going to be able to get 5 clients? How many videos would you have to make? How often would you have to put them out there? And your guess at this, your strategy, might be off. Sometimes your strategy is just not right. Sometimes things look a lot easier than they are. But that's okay. That's why there are do-overs. That's why there are reiterations. It's kind of appropriate after messing up that card. So the idea is that you break down the big goal into small goals. Those small goals basically add up to the big goal. Back to the idea of weight loss that we started out with earlier. The idea of, okay, if you ate in a certain way, I'm not a nutrition coach or anything like that, but let's say you watch your carbs, you watch your calories if you're into doing that kind of thing. You have some kind of physical activity. Maybe you employ things like intermittent fasting or things like that. You take a couple strategies and you put them into place. Let's say you don't eat before 11 a.m. So you're getting the autophagy from intermittent fasting. From overnight, you stop eating, 7 p.m. or something like that. You get 12 hours and another 4 of autophagy. And then you get some kind of physical exercise. And you keep your sugary, carby things. You only eat them on weekends. During the week, you eat really clean. Well, if you stuck to those dailies over a month, it would be unreasonable to assume that you didn't lose some weight. How much is going to vary depending on how rigidly you hold to it. What demands are you making of yourself? How hard are your dailies? And you're going to know better than anybody what your limits are. Now, throughout this process, I'm going to be showing you tricks on how to increase those limits, but this is the basic idea of how it's being tracked, is with these crazy little boss fight things. All right, so after some time, you're going to have this boss that you have to fight. Now, it's going to be, you want to stack it so that it is very unlikely that you would win against this boss, this big boss, unless you do the dailies. And then if you do the dailies, you make it so that it's very unlikely that you would lose. So when we get into the actual construction of boss fights, we'll go more into this. And it'll be a little playing around. Like the first boss fight you design, you might make stuff too hard. You might make stuff too easy. It really depends on you and the kind of demands you tend to put on yourself. I've made a lot of them way too hard. I've gotten my ass kicked a bunch of times in boss fights. And that's okay. You know, you need to know where the edge is. and that's this guy looks much better when he gets the backgrounds. If I didn't say it already, you all will see the final cards in this. You're getting a little bit of a tease where they're kind of getting thrown aside before I put backgrounds on them, but they look good in the end. All right, so let me see if I've gone through all this because I keep going off and talking about these cards. Guess that's the downside of not staring at me the whole time, is that I might get lost in the kind of stuff you're looking at, you know? Oh yeah, this guy's based on Le Battleur, the juggler, or the magician, if you're a Rider Mate, oh Lord, Rider Waite Smith type. And he actually kind of winds up looking a little like Kuririn in Dragon Ball, if any of you have subjected yourselves to that. He doesn't have a nose. Anyway, boss fights are one of the things that has kept this going, and the reason is the boss fights have a wager, a bet. And that bet is not really between just you and this boss. That bet is between you and, if you follow my recommendation, something that's called a Ludogeist. And a Ludogeist is one of the things that really makes this system work. Because if you make a bet against the spirit and you don't keep it, things happen. Here's another one I mess up. This guy was going to be based, actually is based on Alex Hormozy. Those of you that are in the business world probably know about Alex Hormozy. He's quite a character right now. So this guy is very built, and I give him complete with the nose strip, and it looks very intense when I'm done sketching him out here. Squinty, serious eyes, doing very serious reading here. One of his hands winds up being off the edge of the card. You can't see it. It's because he's running another business with it. He's acquiring a business with it. If you guys are in businesses of your own, I would highly recommend you check his stuff out. He's got tons of free material out there, and his books are really good. And his videos, to repeat myself, are really good. Check them out. All right, people. Boss fights. Boss fights, boss fights, boss fights. And I think I pretty much covered the basics of it. As I said before, there will be better versions of this video, but this is going to give you just a basic concept. Oh, the witch. I forgot about the witch. She winds up looking pretty wonky. And not at all like the rest of the witches in this game, because this game does actually have, well, the way I play it does have storyline stuff, and the witches, my witches, the way I do witches are more like ninjas. They're thieves and creepy, kind of creeping around in the woods, fighting against the establishment. They're a lot of fun. I'm a witch in this, and not in the, well, there's no not this, because this is, I'm in the game for the long haul, but you guys will see there's a big part of this that involves creating stuff, making stuff, drawing stuff, and getting better at it. If you think my art's bad now, then you should have seen it before. And if you think it's pretty good now and you find it really intimidating, don't worry about it. You too can aspire to this level in some amount of time. It's be not amazed. Fear not. Fear not. This can be you too. Just occasionally getting Sharpie on your One Piece gamer mouse pad, I think they call that thing. All right. So this is, like it or not, this is the promised video on boss fights, and I keep realizing that I keep thinking I've run out of footage to talk over, and then I'm like, no, I still have more. Apparently, there's still more for me to say if we want to actually get you guys to see the end of this. So I guess I'll take a moment and look at my notes and make sure I knew, yeah, believe it or not, there were notes, and see if there are other things that you all need to know about. All the little parts from these dailies add up to bonuses that give you an unfair advantage in the boss fight, the big boss fight, which would otherwise be unfairly stacked against you. And if you don't get all of these dailies, that's not a big problem, because actually you probably are doing too much to achieve the goal and assuming that way too much has to be done. There are probably a few daily things that if you did them, it would be unreasonable to assume that you would not be successful. What are those things? What are those activities, those habits? This guy's a mad scientist who winds up looking like, kind of like the Igor character in the Ghostbusters cartoon, for those of you that are familiar with such things. Although Igor was not as much of a mad scientist. He was one of the more level-headed of the group, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, actually was oh my God, his name is escaping me right now, but he actually wrote Ghostbusters, the guy that played Igor. That'll come to me as soon as I'm done this video. I'll be like, I should have been talking about boss fights, and instead I was talking about Igor. All right, boss fight gets broken down. It's a big goal broken down into small goals. Makes it statistically unlikely that you'll beat the boss initially unless you do the work, in which case the tables turn, and you're more likely to actually win the damn thing. Yeah, these are them without the backgrounds. The key is in the dailies, people, to making your daily stuff into good habits that become part of just how you do things and make stuff easier and easier to do going forward. And this is the end of the video, and therefore this is the end of my rambling speech. Hope you all come back and check out the next video. I don't know what it's going to be about yet. I haven't thought that far ahead. I have to plan. So we will see where it takes us, but this has been video 7 on boss fights, and let's see if I can actually splice this thing together into a usable piece. Wishing you all the best out there in this crazy world, and hoping that you all are out there causing a happy ruckus, and more importantly than that, using the magic. Use the magic, people. Do it.